Today's guest is Cari Waters, Sales Director at Castagra Products, Inc. So, Cari, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is a privilege to have your time today.
Yeah, I'm excited because I know your story because you help us out a lot, but not everyone does. So, I know when you first graduated, you came out with an interior design degree. Was that always the plan?
I did well. Originally, I was a business major, and then I ended up getting into my economics coursework that I had to take. I was at Florida State, and I'll never forget statistics threw me off, and I ended up with a C. And so I just jumped ship at that point and went into interior design.
What about statistics that you didn't like?
I just could never understand it as far as all the comparisons and the charts, and it's funny because and I love numbers now, but back then I just was not into it. I really wanted to be more on the art side, and so that was of interest to me. So
Yeah. What were your early opportunities in the interior design side?
well, when I graduated Florida State, I went up to Boston where my sister was living at the time. She was a BU major, Boston University, and then I ended up getting my first job. And you've spoken to one of my coworkers there before. We worked on really amazing projects, and so very high profile in the Boston area. And I was the junior, and I got really quickly promoted and put on as the project designer, which is really unheard of at 23 years old. So it was very exciting, and being a decision maker on some things that were above what was above my pay grade at the time. But it was a really good experience to have.
Yeah. How did you adapt just kind of being thrown into that situation?
Really, just I guess trying things and not being afraid to make a decision and just going for it. I had encouragement from the architects, and would we get into it, they give me a hard time, I give them a hard time, because it was always the joke of the architects would always take the budget first in the construction, and then they leave what was left over to the designer. So you had to make do with whatever their leftovers were. So
Make it
they
look
and
pretty, right? Make it
yes,
it's
and
like
make
a
it pretty
marketing gimmick.
on no money.
Now, how did you get the sales bug? Because you make that shift, right?
Absolutely. I grew up, my dad was a salesperson, so I grew up watching him, and he had his own business. So on that entrepreneur side. And so I remember going to a trade show with him thinking, wow, this is really exciting. This is a fun experience. And he was doing a presentation, and watched him. I sat in on one of the break rooms and watched him do the presentation. I thought, this is fun. This is what I want to do. And on the interior design side, I would see my sales reps come in, and they would leave. Meanwhile, I was stuck there till 9, 10 o'clock at night, working on projects for the same pay. And so I was like, wait a minute, they can come in for 2 hours and make the same I make all day. That looks like but you don't realize what they're doing back in their home offices and all the road time they have either. But you don't see that when you're on that side. But so it was in that exposure. I worked for Ethan Allen, so it was kind of my crossover time, where I got to work on some really amazing projects in the Georgia. I was living in Georgia at the time, and some really amazing homes, and was designing all of their furniture and putting in everything. And it was a learning curve, and I love the sales because then I would get commission on it. So I once I started to get that commission check, I never looked back.
Yeah, and just so growing up watching your dad doing sales and growing his business, like what sort of looking back lessons did you kind of take in? Like, what were some of the key lessons?
Well, I think for him, seeing he would come in, he would be on the road for the week, and he'd be going to all these, very exciting places. So being able to travel and see things during your day was always, interesting to me. It was a way to not just be stuck in a little home, being stuck in an office in corporate America, 9 to 5. But you also are working nights and weekends. I would definitely see him working evenings, and I remember helping him out with his expense report, and on the weekends, and putting out all the receipts and file folders, uh, laying those out on the floor. And so I definitely saw firsthand what goes into on the backside of what sales reps go through. So
Yeah.
not all glamour.
So stylistically, how would you describe your sales style or your philosophy?
My sales style, I really just, I guess I work backwards. I see what the goal is. I make the goal for myself. I'm not afraid to uh, go for something that people are going to say, "Oh, that's unachievable." There's no way you can do that. So I really want to double down and prove them wrong. So I will go for something that's a little, the brass ring that's a little too high, and then I work my way backwards. How am I going to get there? Who do I need to talk to? What are the steps to get into that person, get past the gatekeeper, get my presentation in front of them, get my idea in front of them, and then of course have follow up. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of sales reps make is they get in, they move on to the next thing, and they don't do the necessary follow up and keep the promises to the customer. So you really, if you can do that, I mean, you're just that much farther ahead of the other sales reps out there.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with you is you're very sort of steps oriented.
Mhm.
Have you always been that way?
It is. I work backwards. I think concrete sequentially, and I work my way backwards as to here's where I need to get. How am I going to get there? And yes, I've always just been that way. I've been a planner and think through, and it's and break down the steps. And I think written steps are necessary to not just have it in your head, but to write everything down and have a visual of how are you going to get there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, going a step further and just looking at, you've done the sales side, and you've sort of built up a lot of experience on the sales operation side. How is that different?
I think when you're with the customer, listening to them, and seeing what their need is, I think that's also another mistake that sales reps make. They don't pay attention to what their customer is asking of them. They're so busy on getting their messaging across and their technical information that has been pumped into them from the learning training experience at their company, and they become technological tornadoes when they come in to talk to a potential, and then they don't take the time to take notes, to listen, to be an active listener, and to also to repeat back to the customer, to the client, this is what you told me, and how we can fulfill it. And then that's part of the closing is you can just repeat back what they just said to you. It's really easy on that sense. Where on the operational side, I think you have to look at what are the logistics. Question that came up just this week is how are we going to get that landed? Are we going to need to have that put on the roof? And how are we getting that from point A to point B? And is that going to go to our distributor's yard? Are we going to deliver that and have that go through the distributor, but we're going to have that landed LTL carrier? So I think, thinking of those things ahead of time. My experience with probably coming from the interior design side, we had to think through how are you can get this beautiful custom design casework done, but how's it going to get through the front door? How big is your door? Can it get through? So where do we need to have the seam lines and get things, have it broken down, and so it can actually get up there. We can't remove like a grand piano on the second floor. You can't remove the glass and have a crane and get it in. So you have to think through some of the process on logistics.
Essentially, you're kind of taking a seat on the customer side of the table and saying what are the issues that they need to work through and the information they need.
Absolutely. And it's service. Sales, I think it's a bad rap because we're really just here to service, to be of assistance to somebody, not and to get what their goal is. So in a way we're just public servants. So
Yeah, for sure. Now, you have a very friendly approach. And I know, there's those sayings that, nice people don't finish first, but I don't think that's the case. Um, have you been told that, you're, as a strength or a weakness or whatnot? Like, how does that play in with all your experiences?
oh, don't let my kindness fool you.
Perfect. Tell me more.
There's definitely when it's the sales goal and I'm going to be achieving that, there's the certain friendliness, but then there's also that you need to give them a little bit more of a directive too, that you can direct their actions in a way. Maybe it's something like they need some help on a discount of some sort, or a delivery date needs to be changed because they're not going to be ready for that until such and such, but we need to get the order through. There's ways to work around, as far as helping them, but helping yourself because you need to get that sale in for that month. I think there's some of that, and I've been on that sales side, so that's um, part of it is the negotiation process. whether it's a bidding situation for a contractor, um, they're looking all about numbers and making sure that you are of value to them. So um,
Yeah, it sounds like you've done some learning there.
I have. I definitely have. I've lost a few because I didn't say the right thing. So when I would come out of a sales meeting, I would always get into my car and think about what did I do right. I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what was good that I did, and what was bad that I did, and what was just plain ugly. What was something I am never going to do again. So I would definitely kind of have that playback in my mind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when I was training sales reps in my last position, and we would co-travel together, I would sit in the car and ask them the same. We'd get back from a presentation and say, what was good, bad, and ugly. And if you can answer those three questions and learn from each sales presentation, it's going to set you up for the next one better.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's a lot of self-awareness around there. How do you kind of accurately identify what the ugly and the bad is?
What worked and what didn't? What did you see their eyes light up? Where were they? Where was the audience when you were presenting that? Were they off, eating their sandwich at the lunch and learn presentation and they could care less that you were even in the room? Or were they engaged? Were they asking questions and leaning into the table and wanting to know more, touching, if it's a product and actually physically touching the product sample that's on the table. So you're really kind of gauging some of those things as you're doing your presentation. I was at a one of our distribution locations, and I was showing a sample, and everybody wanted to touch it. It was so, and that was fun. Everybody was really engaged and interested. And if they're not, you need to just kind of recalibrate where you are and what you're talking about, and get their attention again. And maybe you ask a leading question like a who, what, why. Kind of a question that gets them thinking and has some interaction from them. I think sometimes we spend too much time talking, which is what I'm doing right now, but too much time talking and not getting that feedback. So
Yeah, well, this is different. This is an interview. But what I when I'm listening to you talk, the word that I think about is empathy. Would that be accurate?
absolutely, absolutely. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes and think about what they're experiencing. And if you are maybe not coming across with the accurate information that they need, you're missing the mark. So dial it back to what is their need and what are they expressing to you. Maybe they need to know more about the technical. Maybe they need to know a little bit more about the warranty program, or how we did this in another project. Maybe having some of those different conversations. Not just It's not about what you feel like you need to get across; it's what they need to get. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've run across people that you were managing that had some challenges with empathy. How do you sort of try to bridge that? I'm sure it's not everyone is successful in sort of coming over to that side, but how do you try to approach that?
How do you teach empathy?
Yeah,
I think having just the conversation of having them I guess, gain that awareness. Like, where did you see that they were wandering? Where they were looking off and were paying attention to you. Where do you feel like you lost or missed the mark? So I think part of that, when you're good, the bad, and the ugly, you're looking at those things and you're gauging how you did, which makes you be more a little introspective. So I think, sure, I guess teaching your salespeople that, and being a role model in that sense, is maybe sharing a story where you screwed up. I've had plenty, and you come out and you make it a laughable moment, as opposed to that I'm so perfect and you haven't done this correctly. I think when you say I screwed this one up, let me tell you about this one time when I did a presentation, and then you're all laughing about it, and you're a person to them at that point. Because you're evoking empathy, because they actually feel for you, because they're going through that moment with you when you're sharing that story.
yeah,
So.
for sure. That makes a lot of sense. Like you said, everyone makes mistakes, so just
Mhm.
being able to sort of share that openly is an important process. Now, you set this up perfectly. You know, give me an example of a great sales moment.
Oh, great sales moment. I don't know if I can mention the name of the hotel chain, but I know that we've spoken about hotel.
Generalities is fine. Generalities is fine.
Okay. We've spoken about hotels before being on the supply side, and I was in their facility, their headquarters, and I was in a major city, and walked out, and I know that I had nailed that whole presentation. It was fabulous. It was they were from start to finish, and we were going to do an entire rollout plan of all of a certain. Hotels have different certain brands, and we were coming out with the brand national brand standard program, and I was helping them roll out that plan with the interior design team there, and it was a thing of beauty. I mean, it was everything that it was splendid. And I talked, we had to talk about numbers. We had to get down into the pennies because and how we were going to roll things out and what was going to be phased in and how many were going to be purchased every quarter, and definitely doing that. So on the national specification and brand standard side, that's really exciting as those larger picture projects to me. So
For sure. So to follow that up, can you mention, you don't have to name specific names or anything, but mention one bad.
one bad. Oh, I've had so many. I think probably my funniest bad was I was we were cold calling. I was training a sales rep in Atlanta from a company, and she came over and she was riding with me, and I was taking her in to see some customers and see this is how we do it, and I was showing her. She was terrified of cold calling, and I said, so I can walk in anywhere, I can talk to anybody. Cold calling does not scare me. I Anybody has a you can find any reason to talk to somebody. If at their desk they have a picture of a dog, then you say, well, I have a dog, and how old is your dog? You can always strike up conversation. It's so easy. But she was terrified of it, so I said, okay, we're gonna pick go on your phone, find an interior design firm nearby. We're gonna just drive up, and we're just gonna walk in and see these people. So I did, and my phone, I don't know what setting I had on my phone, but some button got hit, and it was the most egregious rap song coming out of my phone that I have ever. I mean, I was embarrassed. I gave her my phone. I'm like mid speech with this receptionist, trying to get in, trying to be impress her, and I have this horrible like song coming out. I mean, profanity left and right. I threw my phone at Rachel that was traveling with me, and I mean, it was terrible. We were all laughing. She went outside, took care of it, hit the pause button, came back in. I continued without laughing in front of doing the presentation with this client, and we got out. I couldn't stop laughing when we got to the car. It was the funniest thing. We talked about it years later. I mean, it was just the worst. So I definitely a non-forgettable cold call moment.
Wonderful. And then you talk about the dreaded ugly. What's an ugly?
Oh, the ugly. I think probably to me was when you are in a group. Now, hasn't happened with my experience so far here, but I've other places that is boring. Like you're presenting um like a moisture and presentation or something that's so boring and dry, and construction and all the things that can go wrong, and you have architects that are falling asleep, or contractors that are just fading out. I mean, those are, I think that's the ugly, and you can't get it back. Like you're trying, and you try to ask a question, and you cannot get them to even engage. They're just not going to be responsive, and you just have to get through it, and you're just like, I just want to hurry and get out of this meeting. I think that's probably the ugliest was you know
Yeah. As you were explaining that, I just pictured time standing still.
yeah. Yes, and that's what it feels like, and you're choking up there, and you're trying to get through the presentation, and it's so miserable.
Yeah. So enough of that. What about you talked about a dog? And did you have any hobbies as well?
I do. I have the cutest Bichon Shih Tzu, Shishan, and he's 11. He's a senior. He's been with me since he was 8 weeks old, and he is just the cutest. He's off spending the day with the grandparents today. He goes over there sometimes when I'm working. So, but I think He definitely teaches me to enjoy the small moments in life and to sit down and play with him. At the end of the day, he's a good boy. He'll nap through my Zoom meetings. He'll nap through my phone conversations, and relax. Sometimes as you see, like sometimes he likes to jump on my lap when we're in a meeting. And he's definitely a lap dog. But I think when we go out for our evening walks and we play and throw the ball around a little bit, I have to take that break from where my head has been on work, and then I have to be with him because he's been kind of waiting on me all day, and that's our time together. So
Yeah. So, definitely. I know one of the things that I noticed that, you're good at building relationships. And the one thing that was really evident to me was that we've kept in touch with a lot of people in a lot of the roles that you've done in the past. Not everyone does that,
um,
naturally or well. What are the keys there? Like how have you been able to do that?
I think just ongoing friend. We went through some bad times, some good times together. Forged in fire, so to speak. Some of those relationships, and I think that being able to even when you had a manager who maybe you didn't get along with while you were there, they had their reasons. And to kind of look going back to that empathy actually is everybody has a reason, and why they do things. And then maybe they were under pressure for other reasons, but we're friends now because we're not in those roles anymore. Or I had someone um, who wasn't a good sales rep that was not up to keeping up with the performance standards the expectation that I had set, but made it to a different role somewhere and is doing quite well, because it just wasn't the right fit. But it doesn't mean that we're bad people. It doesn't mean that we can't be friends later. So I think maintaining those good relationships and friendships, is really because of respect and honesty, and being able to look at those reasons why we were in those put together in those roles.
It sounds like you're being able to sort of separate out, different areas of people's life and their strengths, and understand that just because someone is not strong in all areas, that they don't immediately become a bad person, and that you can
Right.
focus on the good qualities of individuals.
Everybody has good. Everybody has good, and there's reasons why maybe someone wasn't doing well. Maybe they were going through a divorce at the time, and they were just trying to cope and get through the day, and it was so hard on them. And then maybe that's why they were mean. Everybody has, or maybe things were really great for them and they were happy in their lives and satisfied, and they were awesome to you. So hopefully, it's a good experience, but not all the time, not always that people are. So
Yeah. If you could go back to any time in your career or life and give yourself advice, what would that be?
stay out of debt. Well, that would be number one for just general purposes of my life. I paid off my student loans, so that was probably one of my biggest achievements. I would say, career wise, looking back, if I could tell myself, when I was 27, keep going.
Yeah. Now, keep going means what to you?
Um, I had people that told me, you're not going to do this, you're not going to make it, you can't be in construction, you're not going to, you can't. There's certain limitations that you have, and you don't. You can
Yeah.
do it.
What gets you excited about what you're doing now?
Um, our growth. I think what excites me is what gets me going is definitely looking at how we are, where we're going, what our trajectory is, and building the team, and putting things in place and growing. I think that's really exciting to me, and being able to see where we were 6 months ago, where we are now, where we're going to be 6 months from now.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Carrie, thank you so much. I've heard others say it, but I agree. Is you're sort of very positive and forward thinking, and I think your upward potential is huge. So,
Thank
no,
you.
thank you for what you do.